Hello guys. What is the lowest a probability can go without being completely impossible? Well, I don't know if this would be it, but there's this pretty absurd phenomenon that I was not aware of until very recently. The last day of April, in fact. There is such a thing as ball lightning, which you probably have not heard of. But the name describes itself. It is indeed possible for the electricity from a lightning bolt to form a spherical mass. It is so unspeakably rare that I don't even think scientists know what to make of it. And even if you were fortunate enough to have witnessed it, it's only for a split second. If you happen to look up ball lightning footage online, chances are whatever you find will be a hoax. It is that rare. When I was coming up with the idea for this episode, I had in my head that only a few tens of thousands of people have witnessed it. But that's only by 1960 standards. Today, more people have witnessed it, but it is still as rare as a bullfrog in a beehive. Last week, my coworkers looked up the modern statistics, and it said something like 5% of all people ever born have seen ball lightning. And yes, I know in previous episodes I've thrown a lot of numbers out there, but the total amount of any human being that has ever been birthed, not counting the fetuses, they have to be officially born. All of those people, 117 billion, at least. I've thrown several numbers around, and it's growing rapidly. I think it was just the end of last year that we reached 8 billion living people. But from now on, until the day it goes past that, I'm gonna be saying 117 billion. It's official. Obviously, we're not gonna know exactly, but it's just at least. Apparently 5% of all those people have witnessed it, but that would still equate to a whopping 5 billion people. I doubt nearly that many people have seen this. I mean, it probably wouldn't be as low as tens of thousands, because if it were that low, there wouldn't be a Wikipedia article about it, but there is, and you can look it up yourself. So yeah, I must have underestimated while they overestimated. We'll just leave it at, it is extremely rare. They predicted the likelihood of seeing spherical lightning is about the same as just getting struck by lightning, or having one get struck very close to you. But I was able to debunk the rarity factor on my own of getting struck by lightning. It can actually be more common and predictable than you would think. Yeah, still unlikely, but if we put this into perspective, Roy Sullivan, you heard of him? He got struck by lightning 7 times in his life. And he lived to be 71. Wow. 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 Okay, enough, you get the point. With all these 117 billion people, yes, there's gonna be some pretty insane coincidences, which is kind of to be expected since there has been so many of us. But Roy Sullivan worked as a park ranger, which more than likely meant he had quite a bit of metal on him. And obviously, metal and electricity conduct to each other. If you were all armored up in a whole suit and you go out in a thunderstorm, I would be more concerned if you didn't get struck by lightning. Obviously, he didn't have that much metal in comparison, but I'm sure he still had enough for when it was really stormy, electricity magnetized its way to him. I'm still amazed it happened 7 times, but all the pieces still fit together pretty well. You'd think that after getting struck 7 assing times, he would just take the day off whenever it was raining pretty hard, because, it wouldn't be safe. I mean, rangers and police or whatever the hell, their job is to sometimes get into dangerous situations, so I don't know, maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe at least he could have taken some metal off of him when it was raining. I don't know. I'm not an expert, okay? Let's just leave it at that. But I'd say you would still be more likely to get struck by lightning even if you were butt naked in the middle of the rain with no metal on you whatsoever. Hell, not even the small metal that is a part of these glasses somewhere. Yeah, right here. Not even that much. Completely nude. You would be more likely to get struck by lightning than you would be to just see spherical lightning. I didn't even know it existed until recently. But it is real. What is the point I'm trying to make here? Well, just take a minute to consume this, but my grandfather, the husband of the grandma who had that trip at the water park last summer, you can see 107 if you need more info, but he claims he saw it a long time ago. It's hard to believe, I know, but I do think we really need to cut the horse crap and actually tell you this story. But we're not going to cut to the chase just yet. Let me put you in a little bit of background first. Grandpa told me the earliest house he remembers living in was from the years 1953 to 1961. And at the time they moved in, the freaking thing was 100 years old at least. That equates to this damn thing being no more recently than the 1850s. That would have been decades before the homes I talked about in the episode 3 is a spooky number. You can go look at that if you want. But the house no longer exists because shortly after they moved out, the next owner had caught the place on fire in one way or another. And it was made out of some pretty dry wood. The whole thing was gone in like 20 minutes. So I think today it would just be an empty field unless somebody has bought the land and built something new on there, but I think it would just be an empty field. This was in southeast Kansas, but I should probably mention before I forget that Grandpa's family and his mom's parents had the exact same floor plan, meaning that the layout for both houses was identical. There may have been a few minor changes here and there, but overall, basically the same thing. Grandpa lived in southeast Kansas while his grandparents were in southwest Missouri, or somewhere around that border. Both houses were about an hour's drive apart, and I'm doubting the one in Missouri exists anymore either. Anyway, so when I told my mom's family this story, I got a few of the details wrong. I had misunderstood Grandpa while he was telling me what happened. At first, I thought that the lightning ball had emerged from downstairs and slowly made its way upstairs, whilst his bed was right at the top of it. But that was before he had drawn me a floor plan of the house, which I will show you right now. This here is the bottom floor, and those numbers, I don't know if you can see them very well, but they correlate to pictures in the photo book we have. But what we're worried about is upstairs. I believe Grandpa and his early deceased brothers all slept up here. Technically it was all the same room, but the stairway almost split the two in half, so it's kinda two rooms. A north side and a south side. But it was never consistent which room belonged to who. Depending on how often Grandpa's mom would rearrange the furniture up there, that would determine if his bedroom was north or south. And I'm gonna go ahead and assume she did that way more often than she really needed to. In this case, Grandpa's bed was against the south wall down here, which would be closest to Oklahoma where he is stationed now. I have no clue if his brothers were present for this, but if they were there, they probably would have been on the north side, I'm guessing, closer to Nebraska. Now this wall right here would have been technically the front of the house, even though they didn't enter from that part. And Grandpa's memory was fading a bit. He thought there was just one window in the middle of the upstairs, but no, there was a window on both the south side and the north side. From the east wall on the south side of the house, there was a window, and I do believe it was there where the massive lightning ball formed and flew towards his bed. And when I say it was huge, I mean it. It had to have been at least 2 feet wide. They vary in numerous sizes, but this is probably one of the bigger ones that have ever formed, at least in human history. Now you see, Grandpa's bed was just a basic ass metal frame. Nothing fancy, just a basic metal frame, kind of like the ones you see in hospitals or prisons. By normal circumstances, that huge wad of electricity just flying towards him would shock him pretty harmfully. But instead, when it touched the metal, it just vanished. When first hearing this story, I made the assumption that the ball existed for like at least 45 seconds, going very slow. But I should have known better. Just like a real lightning bolt, it's over pretty much just as quickly. It formed at the window, whoosh, it's gone. Obviously, Grandpa didn't have time to examine it. He still saw it. It wasn't like so fast for our eyes and our brains to comprehend, but it was still too fast to actually make anything out of it. Grandpa rushed downstairs to tell his parents either immediately after or the following morning. I don't remember which, but it was more than likely the prior. He forgot what his dad had told him because it was a long time ago and Grandpa was super young. Like, I think he said he was about 5 or 6 years old when this occurred. So let's just assume this happened in 1955. But the house he was in when it happened was built probably mid-1800s, no more recently than the 1850s for sure, at a time they called the Victorian era. 1955 was the golden era. It was after the Great Depression, after World War II. You know, people were starting to get their crap together and feel happy about themselves. So for those of you who were confused about the meaning behind this title, well, it could have been either Zeus gifted the Victorian or Zeus gifted the gold. but I decided screw it and just do both, because that sounded the coolest, and I haven't had an episode with a title that had more than 4 words in it since 118. So there you go. And you know what? While we're talking about Zeus, I used to think that the Greeks viewed him as god of the gods, but no, he's the god of lightning. Obviously, no such thing. There's only one god, if even that. But you know, this was history. So that's the basic gist of the episode, and I could just end things here, but Grandpa told me a few more stories about this house. I think just for craps and giggles, I'm just gonna throw in a few bonuses. These bonuses are something my mom's family has not heard yet, so this is gonna be new for all of you. So like I mentioned earlier, the house was old as bitch drunk, and it probably had a furnace that looked something similar to this. Obviously no modern day fireplace or anything like that, just like a furnace, which I believe back in the 1950s they referred to as a boiler or something. I don't remember the exact terminology that my grandpa used, but it's just a furnace. During the winter, they had plenty of wood to burn to keep the house warm, so that marks that off the list. But what about the summer? Well, obviously, there's no such thing as installation or an AC in a mid-1800s house. I don't even think those electrical fans they just plug into the wall, I don't even think those were a thing. And if they were, they didn't have any. So what they did instead is something I've never even heard of. I'm sure you guys have seen with your own eyes semi-trucks on the road or highway that sometimes have trailers attached to the back of them. Well, apparently my grandpa's family had one of those trailers on their property. Although I would imagine it looked different than the ones today because, you know, this was 70 years ago. They took the trailer and pressed it against their house. And on hot-ass summer nights, they would just sleep in the trailer because, you know, it's made of metal, hence keeping it pretty cool inside. They even put their television up against the window so they could all just chillax, vibe, and go to sleep. Have something to do inside that trailer, because it's not like they had many options. Damn man, I tell you, there's always an abundance of wild-ass stories to hear from your grandparents. We're not even scratching the iceberg here. Alright, one more story, because this episode has probably gone on long enough. So this house was built on a hill, which probably means the foundation for it wasn't as sturdy as other homes, especially considering it was 100 years old. Even by 1950s standards, it was a pretty suck-assy place to live. There were countless occurrences of pretty poor construction. Raccoons would be in the walls often, just scratching at them. Woodpeckers would peck holes into the house from the outside. There was one instance when it snowed, and Grandpa's parents had a huge wad of snow around their bed, literally in the room on the floor. Another time, Grandpa's mom was walking from the kitchen and saw a pretty good-sized snake just slithering its ass across the carpet in the living room. I don't know about you guys, but I'd say this house has seen far better days, and it would probably be best just to let it be put to pasture. I mean, the house was on a pasture, but you get my damn point. It wasn't safe enough to live in. But probably the worst example was when their dog, old Jack, was just crawling and playing underneath the house and he got sprayed by a skunk. Yes, a freaking skunk. Odor from skunks is a lot worse than people realize. It's not just like a fart. No, it is bad. Like, it's toxic. It can literally kill you. The scent is unbelievably powerful. In fact, if you get even remotely close to their spray, you have to bathe in tomato juice, of all crap, to get it off you. Holy hot bitch. You want to get even more screwed up? Grandpa's mom had baked 3 sexy-ass apple pies and had placed them on the windowsill, and all of them had to be thrown in the trash. It was so ungodly. They had to throw away the majority of their clothes and get new ones. And on top of that, they pretty much lost their sense of smell for quite a while because it was that powerful. They weren't even aware how disgusting they were. They went to the clothes store to buy a bunch of clothes, and the woman who was working as the clerk had like the most awkward look on her face, and when the mom asked, "Do we happen to smell weird to you?" the woman replied, "You smell horrible." I don't know if that much emphasis was put onto that sentence, but you get what I mean. It was bad. Look, when God created the earth, he invented a lot of beautiful artifacts in nature. There was a lot of beautiful crap. But when Satan barged in and brought his inventions into the world, it became this really off-balance mixture. Creatures like skunks, snakes, tarantulas, and many more shitty animals were not from God, they were from sin. They serve no purpose other than to scare the piss out of people. Or in the skunk's case, to make a really cool rug. Although I could be thinking of bears, but whatever. Alright, we've gotten so far off track of what this episode was intended to be, so we really do need to stop. That was this episode. I will see-